Okay, welcome to an intro to Blazing Web Accessibility. And in the description, there's an at-risk. What I mean is not only with Blazor, it's also Microsoft Cognitive Services. And why you will see later on today. And I'm happy to be here at NDC London, virtually at least. So let's start with the introduction. I'm going to talk about the basics of accessibility, and you will hear maybe new insights about accessibility than other talks. There are great talks about accessibility, but I hope and I believe that I will give you some more insights about maybe other ways of accessibility. And of course, people who do know me will already know what I will talk about. Then I'm going to talk about the basics of Blazor and the basics of Microsoft Cognitive Speech, and fuse with some live demos, of course. And then I'm going to introduce combining the best of both worlds to build the future of web accessibility with a demo. And why do I call it the future? It's already there. It's already possible. But if no one doing this, yeah, then it's technology that isn't used. And with the future, I mean that each website, every website, each company, each government will start to do this. And if I introduced my idea, I'm going to throw you a step-by-step guide how to build this. So I'm Dennie, and I'm president at Declercq. And Declercq is a nonprofit that helps people with learning disabilities, with other disabilities, and also connect the social field, I call it, with the IT field. Since the pandemic, we had a lot of customers with the social field that we helped with IT knowledge. So we combine both worlds, and we really like to do that. And I'm the president of that nonprofit, and I'm also a Microsoft MVP and developer at that nonprofit. And you will see later on, if you follow me on Twitter or LinkedIn, I'm starting to brand myself in the name to IT coach instead of only developer, but I just marketing-wise to reach customers here in Belgium. For international conferences, it will also always be developer. And in fact, even as IT coach, most of the thing I do is developing software, but explaining why I do that, because I'm really connecting two worlds, the IT sector and the social sector. I do it on a coaching methodology, and that sector just more loves the word coach than developer. Just something branding. But if it works, then it works. So, and I'm also maybe well known for my hashtag Dreaming is Believing. That kickstarted my speaker career in 2017. Oh my God. If I started my speaker career in 2017, I didn't think that was it going to be. But otherwise, there are also very positive things. If I started in 2017, I also didn't think or didn't believe that I would make it to a Microsoft MVP. And then I did so. My lifestyle is be positive and look to what you have. And you will see more about positive maybe in a demo that I throw at you today. I don't know yet. So the question is, why do I make this talk with Blazor and cognitive services? I just have to be honest, I never liked JavaScript, and I had never had the JavaScript feeling under control. So I was used to make mobile applications because, first of all, some possibilities that I'm going to show you today weren't possible in web applications. But on the other hand, I didn't like the JavaScript for the front ends. And why cognitive services? Really to achieve possibilities that weren't possible before. And I call it a real true horsepower. So that's what we're going to do today, combining both technologies to build accessible application. And just give me some words about COVID-19 and about inaccessibility and, unfortunately, exclusion. Folks that follow me for a long time know that I talk about inclusion. My first conference talk was at NDC Sydney and was the power of inclusion. And inclusion is that people with disabilities take part in the normal life of everybody else. For me, that is a major key part to build accessible software. But what we see now, it isn't there yet. And in 2019, we really started to do something on accessibility. And maybe we reached some kind of inclusion. We weren't there yet, but I saw progress. But then the pandemic came and everything collapsed. And that makes me sad or angry. I don't know the right words. For example, here you see the Belgian websites of the COVID-19 restrictions. So it's in 3 country languages, Dutch, French, and German, and also in English. It's all the same, just another language. And of course, for the screenshot, I took the English version. But it's there in Dutch, so you can say it's good. No, it isn't good. Is it accessible? I'm pretty sure for people with blindness, vision loss, it is accessible. But accessibility is not only about people with blindness and vision loss. My biggest expertise is people with learning disabilities. And for people with learning disabilities, this website isn't accessible. Also, not if you do it in English. We will see later on today that I talk about text-to-speech and voice readers. I just say that it isn't used by, for example, governments. It isn't known the technology. I find it a shame because that really leads to exclusion. So people with disabilities are dependent from their parents, are dependent from their caregivers for their institutions. And we can do it in another way. And that's what I'm talking about today. And as you saw in my description, I have some parts, some chapters in this talk. And we're just going to talk about the basics of accessibility. And here we're going to start about talking about people with learning disabilities. They have difficulties reading text. They have also difficulties understanding, so with cognition, with the brain, cognition, and they need more structure, or have difficulty with structures of applications, websites. Reading and understanding is, they see the words. It's not like people with vision loss, they see all the words, but you could just say it is a real hard form of dyslexia, and they cannot make words and they cannot make words with the letters and cannot have an image of that, some people. I must say, and also in my other talks, I say that every disability is a spectrum. So even here you have people who have more difficulties with seeing and understanding words and less. Then you have people with autism, they can have difficulties with structures and confirmation. So I'm an autistic developer myself, and I also say that in other talks, and I have talks about autism. For me, even the structure and even the way they form words are very important. So it has to be very clear. So the regulations, the restrictions, it have to be clear. Then you have dyslexia, and you have also people with mental health issues. Official, you cannot call that, or they don't call it a disability. But if you really want to reach them, you really have to work on structure and confirmations also. And just if I make accessible applications, I want to build that for people with mental health issues too, with those saying that they are disabled, of course, because nobody is disabled. A disability is not if you have a disability that you have disabled. There's also some works about inclusive language and inclusive word use. Oh yes, I forgot something. You have still the well-known accessibility and the disabilities too. People with blindness, vision loss, people with auditory disabilities, people with motoric restrictions, and let's say, of course, I didn't forget them. I included the slide, and I really like accessible applications for those people. And they are needed, and nothing against, of course, like voiceover, screen readers is a good thing. But the situation is, I don't want to call it a problem, but the situation is, most websites are already good use for that people. And it's really good, and I really encourage you to keep making accessible websites as known to target all those people. Later on, you will see what you can do, even with my way of making applications, that you can still include those people, because it's all inclusion, including everyone. The only difference is the disabilities that I spoke about, for example, learning disabilities, there are no accessible websites for them, at least as I see really accessible websites that are working. So, and I used to be a mobile app developer. not only because I didn't like JavaScript, but also I started introducing in my career in 2012 with text-to-speech in applications. And I saw that in apps, the text-to-speech is really an enabler for people with learning disabilities. So here you see a concept of an application that I made, and each button can read aloud. And that's really something really good for accessibility. And people that I worked with, I tested the application and the systems in a coaching center or a daycare center for people with learning disabilities in Ostend. And then I really saw that really helps them understanding the application and getting some information. So we just need to make the difference between text-to-speech and narrator and voiceover. And in fact, the underlying technology is just the same, or can be just the same. So the speech engine is the same, but there are major differences. So narrator and voiceover, and as I said, all the websites know are already, for example, if I give the explanation, the example of the government, it should work for people with the screen reader. And it's really great. So narrator, voiceover is like a screen reader. And how does it work? It reads sequentially the whole screen, from top left to bottom right. Text-to-speech, you really decouple the speech engine, so you don't need screen readers, and it's really targeted for people with learning disabilities and people with dyslexia. How does it work? You click on the control, and it will load the contents that belongs to the control. It's a big difference. So that's really important to know further in the slide. So that was your introduction into accessibility, or although my addition to the already known things about accessibility. Now we're going to talk about Blazor, and we're going to talk about the basics of Blazor. And starting with what is Blazor. Blazor is Microsoft's brand new PWA, or front-end language. There are two flavors, Blazor server-side, and that is hosted as a .NET or a .NET Core web application. And you have the Blazor WebAssembly flavor, and that is with that can run in the browser, so in the client. There's a really affordable solutions. As you will see, I work a lot with nonprofits in the field of social scene, and most of the time their IT budget is very limited. And you can really build an affordable solution if you combine the Blazor technology with the static web apps on Azure storage. Then you really can do it really affordable for people and organizations and nonprofits. It's also really important. So if you want to get started with Blazor, you need Visual Studio 2019, and it's always a good advice to install the latest and greatest version of the application update. Or you can also do it with VS Code. So here you see a screenshot of the template in Visual Studio, and you have if you start the application, you need to make the choice between a server application and a web application. That's the start of your project. And just exploring the basic syntax very short, and I promise there will be live demos. I just do it in slides. The reason is I can share you the slides afterwards, after the presentation, and then you have all the code. So if you explore the basic syntax, it's just mixing C# and at code blocks or with adds where needed, and just HTML. You also have Blazor components, and that's really great. Then you can really make a component. In fact, everything in Blazor is a component. Even a page is a component, but with components, you can also combine components into components and in pages. Like you here see a little demo, welcome to a new application, and then I add accessible component, and everything in the accessible component is on another component, another file. As I promised, we are not only watching slides. It should be boring. So I'm just open up Visual Studio. And I just open Blazing Talks. So each Blazor project starts with a program.cs. And so this is just a boilerplate if you start a new template. And I just did a very little addition. I just made the component accessible component.basic. And then we have your index.basic. And of course, if you really want to work with Blazor for accessible frontends and PWAs, it's always a very good advice and maybe also very necessary to just start learning about Blazor, the whole thing. So that's not the scope of this talk. The only thing that I'm going to do, how to make accessible components and accessible frontends, because in fact it's a new technology. It's not really a new language, but it's a new technology stack. So what you will see is the inventions and combining this with cognitive speech, but it will require more, of course, if you really want to learn it. It's like if you want to learn to make accessible websites and on the normal way, then you need to do your JavaScript, your HTML, your CSS. If you want to build accessible applications in Xamarin, by example, yeah, then you need just the basic Xamarin syntax, and so I think it's just quite normal. So we are opening Blazing Talks. So you see, and my accessible component here is the text. This could be an accessible component. And then you see the daytime, so it's in my time zone. So you know it's in your time zone already. Good work for me. So I did it already. So why could it be an accessible component? Because it's not an accessible component yet. It's just showing how components work. And what it will need it to be an accessible component, we will see later on. So back to the slides. And as I said, you can also do it in Visual Studio Code. But this demo was in VS. I like to switch. I like to work sometimes in VS and sometimes in VS Code, but I think it's like most of you. So as I said, we are going to combine two technologies to achieve a new way of accessibility, and it is Blazor in combination with cognitive services. So again, we are going to start with what are Microsoft Cognitive Services. This Microsoft AI platform, okay, sorry, it's a part of Microsoft AI platform. Microsoft AI platform has more than only cognitive services, which is the really developer-focused part. It's in Azure, it's pay-as-you-go, and it's just simple, easy API calls. This can be via REST and also can be via an SDK that they provide. And as I said, Microsoft has also other AI solutions were more difficult. So the cognitive services is really as easy as calling an API. So really get started very easy. And as I said, you have a lot of Microsoft Cognitive Services and that you can use for various reasons, for accessibility or other types of combining services. So there's another demo, and we are going to create a cognitive service on Azure. So here we are in Azure. I'm going to log in. We are going to create a new resource. And as I said, you can click here, and then you can see all. And you can, to here, click see all, but you can also search, and that is cognitive speech that we are going to use today. Cognitive speech. I'll just click here to be sure. I have the feeling that if I'm streaming via WebEx, that my internet is going really decreases. So it's really yeah. So that's the bad thing. Maybe I just put here speech. Yeah, speech API. Okay, here you have speech. If there are questions already, then it's a really good idea to ask them via, well, there is the demo working, then it's a good idea. So when something is loading, then you can ask questions. And then I can create. And I just call it NDC London 2021, and I call it a 2 to be sure. 21. I choose for free tier, and I choose it Western Europe. Oh, I just do Western Europe. And I just do the standard here. I don't have a choice for a free one. Doesn't matter. And I choose NDC London 21. And I click create. So it's just working with Azure right here. You see I do it at the portal. Of course, you can do all these things also via ARM and even via source control automated. It's all possible. But I'm just showing it here for the control that you see how it works. And then you click here, keys and endpoints. And then here you have the keys. I am allowed to show them because that's what you need. And why am I allowed to show them? Because of course I know it's a demo and it's online. It even works than at a real life conference that everyone can do it with it. So I just delete the resource again because of course I made it already. I prepared with keys that you cannot see today. I'm clever enough to do that. So as you see, there's the same way to work for most cognitive services you can do on that way. Today, we just talked about we are going to work with cognitive speech. So, and what is a speech service? That is text-to-speech, but via the cloud, so via internet. And in the speech service, you also can have custom voice. Then, of course, it's more work. A good use case for a custom voice is, by example, for a person that they can specialize, really satisfy it to, by example, the voice of their parents or their mom or their coach, that it really sounds really well known, that can help for some people with disabilities. But if you want to work with custom voice, it's possible, but of course, there's more work to do then. The difference between text-to-speech via the cloud or via a mobile application, you have that also on mobile application by Android, iOS, and even you have it right now in Windows. But then it really has to be configured device by device. And if this device, it really asks a lot of power from the device. So a lot of people that I know with disabilities have a kind of, let's call it a less expensive smartphone. Then it also can be a good thing. The other thing is the text-to-speech and applications that are really built for, and the smartphones are built for applications. But with the speech service, you can add text-to-speech everywhere. I'm also working on a conference talk, speech everything and let them wise. And then in that talk, you will see you can really get Aloud everything with the text-to-speech way. That wasn't possible today. And as I said, I'm working on talks about that, but I'm going to show you something today that I'm pretty excited of, because it's really something that wasn't possible before, and I do love it. Here. I open my terminal. I was wrong. That I didn't have. So it's here. I have to go to here to my projects. Well, I just opened the Visual Studio just because I don't want to stress. And even if it's just a file on your local device, if you are, while you are presenting, you can stress for everything. I think most of the other speakers can say that. And while everything is also possible in Visual Studio, and I prepared everything, I just opened in Visual Studio instead of Visual Studio Code, because then it's already prepared, the folder and so. And then I show you what it is. So here you see 3 important files. The keys and the keys demos are exactly the same. The only difference is that the keys demos isn't filled in. So here in the speech.thekeys.cs, the key 1 and the endpoint is filled in. But as I said, I don't do it right here because you could spend my Azure bill and I don't want to have this. But for the rest, it's exactly the same. Then here I have my speech service. And in the speech service, you can just call. So you get you connect to the cognitive services, and that's in the NuGet package. So here you go to dependencies, packages. Here you see the Microsoft cognitive speech. So you connect with the key 1 and the region, and then you just call a speech synthesizer. You initialize it, and you call it. As you see, this application is just a console application. Whoever thought that you can make console application that's with the load text? Is it really needed for accessibility? Are people with learning disabilities working with a console application? Yeah, it's a difficult thing. I think no. But what I want to prove is it's really nothing between. It's not something, in my example, an app or a Windows app or an app. It's just an API that you call on the internet that reads the load. I say if it's possible and command prompt then is everywhere possible. That's the reason that I prove it. So hi, DC, well done. And normally you should hear it.
Yep. The only problem is when you use the video codec, the screen gets blurry.
HINDC, London.
Heard it.
Yep, heard it.
Can you whack up the font size a bit? It's because it's using the video codec now, it's all getting a little bit fuzzy. Awesome, much better.
Here.
And can you still hear me?
Yep, that's all good.
Okay. Oh my God. So here is a code. I just built a little command line UI, you just that you and you all so you call the speech.synthesis speaker async. So that's the cognitive speech. So I decided to work on this way that I wanted to show the two technologies separated, so the Blazor technology and the Microsoft cognitive speech. But of course, that's not what you are here for today. You are here for introducing the future of web accessibility. And as I said, you already have an idea what we are going to do right now. We want to make a Blazor application calling the speech API, so from a Microsoft cognitive speech. And the theme of today will be, I don't want it to build a theme about the COVID restrictions. I want it a bit more positive, as you know, the man of dreaming is believing and positivity. I wanted to make a demo, a proof of concept of advices on a positive lifestyle, because, be honest, it sounds more fun than restrictions. And mental health is still important, and all the advices are things that you can do with regulation, so without breaking the law. We are not doing this. Warning, so it's all possible yet, but it's not online yet. The only reason is, it's me. Before I publish it, and I need to do two things more. First of all, I need to do research how I limit the API calls and control it, because that my Azure spill wouldn't burn. And if I want to publish it to GitHub, I need to do some work about with Key Vault or find a way that it's not my own keys and resources in Azure. That's the only thing. But otherwise, you will see everything will pretty work as it should be. So, and we are going to start to do the demo again, but of the real applications as it should be. So let's start this. Again, we are going to Visual Studio. And now we are opening file. Open project. I'll just make a new instance. Why not? And honestly, it's already in GitHub, but it's in a private repo, because, yeah, you know, everyone should do source control their work. So we are going to open Future Web. So Future Web, the future of web accessibility. That's already possible, but that no one uses at the moment. That's the definition of it. You also will see in the project that I did some big differences. So it doesn't look like a web app. Like in the first version, it's really the boilerplate, but no, it really looks like a website. So not with the sidebar. I also branded a bit to the colors of my lovely non-profit TD soft. So, and it really looks like a website and not like an application just by changing the CSS. But we are going to just see the result, and later in this talk I'm going to give you a step-by-step guide, as I promised, how to implement those things.
While this is loading, I have a question
loading.
about confirmation. So what does that mean in this context, confirmation?
What? Compilation?
No, confirmation?
Confirmation, yeah. People need confirmation. Like, my example, just know your sound. So if I give the example, you have two kinds of confirmation. If we talk about people with autism, it's really important. So I'm autistic myself. That it's really clear and confirmed. For example, is it still allowed to? As I said, just for it's not only for COVID, but like for example, just imagine a world without COVID. Is it still, for example, at 9 o'clock that Dennie is delivering his talk? Is it still at that time that will happen? Or is this still allowed? That's confirmation and the part of autism, but also, as I said, I work a lot with people with learning disabilities, and then some people can read a bit, let's say, can read a little, but are not sure, and then they are not sure of what they are reading. Is it true? And in that way, confirmation means, is it really true what I heard? Did I read the word correct? So you have two ways of confirmation. And also for people with mental health issues, is the same as autism. Just being sure on a really understandable and clear way that things will still on that way or aren't still on that way. So here you see the application, and I know I need to do some CSS refactoring that the buttons are aligned better. I know that, so it's still work in project. So we're going to read optimism.
Ism.
Did you hear it?
Yep.
Yeah, because it's a stupid thing. If I'm sharing it, I don't hear it in the web call. So if I let it read it aloud to you, I don't hear it if it's working. So I ask it. And just we going to do that sentence.
An old quote
And
says,
maybe give you
is
a
your
slide,
glass
it's,
half full or
finished.
half empty? For optimistic people, their glass is always half full. The opposite of
So
optimism
it's all
is
about
pessimism.
optimistic things,
Pessimistic
passion,
people don't feel
and of
lucky,
course
and for them,
without
their glass
breaking the
is
law.
always
So
half
like
empty.
here you I see, and I'm really in my passion right now.
Time doesn't exist anymore, and you feel warm and enlightened.
And the purpose in life is also really important. So we're going to close that. So you saw the application, so the result of the application. Now, for talking about the code, I'm going to give you a step-by-step guide how to implement this in your own applications to make the web, the internet, the World Wide Web more accessible for a better future. So this we are going to very fast. The reason is here again is these are just the things that needed for that application. If you have the second part of the slides from here, and I can send you the slides, you really can do everything just with the last part of the slides. You can implement everything. You need the speech service. I'm not doing this again, of course. Then you need Microsoft.Cognity speech, Cognity services.speech NuGet package. And then you need your keys. So for here it's the keys demo. It can be the keys, and of course in the key, you just copy the key that I showed and you paste that in here. It's of course a good idea to do it in Azure Keyboard and so, but I just focused here on the accessibility part and all the other stuff, as I said, also for Blazor, for Cognity Search Speech, for Azure best practices. You really need to know your best practices and your. If I implement everything, then the focus of this talk is just the accessible thing. So here you have the code to call the speech API. So this makes a connection to the. This makes a connection to Azure to call the API. And here's voice from the speakers of the people who are consuming the website. Of course, and I again made a little lie today for you. I am feeling very guilty because I said it's without JavaScript. It just says Blazor. Okay. For this, you can do everything with Blazor, but at this time, Blazor still will evolve year after year or even quarter after quarter. And if you really want to grab an HTML element, like a heading or a paragraph, that's the way that I built application. You need a little block of JavaScript. The good thing is there's one good thing about it. I didn't write it because why not? It's just boilerplate that you can find on if you search it in MS Docs, Microsoft Docs, and even if you give this slide or the later on, if I find a way that I can post the project on GitHub without sharing my screens, you just need to grab that, and it's just 3 lines or 4 lines with the curly brace. So it's not a lot. You just paste this one time in your host.cshtml. On each page, so with page code, I mean what you need to do on each page. You need to inject the IDS runtime. That's for that piece of code that you call your HTML elements. And of course, you need to do everything that I show in the next slides. You need to add references and add reference to your elements that you want to use with the red load function. In fact, to the elements that you want to access from code. And if I say it in pseudocode, it's just element, add reference, reference name, and then the content of the element. And below you see the real code. And you also need in your C# code block, or in your code block, you need the element reference. For example, here you see the page head for the page passion. Then you have the readaload method. And the readaload method, so you get your info from JavaScript. That method is grabbing the text of that element. And if you have that text of that element, you just do await synthesis of speech with that text in that element. And here I returned. You will see I refactored a bit working on today. You can even make it way more error prone, and you will see it later on today, but it's not in the slides yet. And then I have my private async task that I can read the head, and I just call the read aloud with the page head. And then I returned here. So now we are going to go a bit longer, quite a bit longer about the demo, because I wanted to show you some elements. And I also want to show what I was working about, even that's not ready for the slide deck yet. So we are going to Visual Studio. Just need that. I just need to be aware of the time. So here you have, as I said, the host.cshtml. Here I just pasted the script, the little bit of a JavaScript. Then I have my services. In the services, I have my speech service. I should say the things that you already saw, for example, the keys and the keys demos and the NuGet packages is just the same as in the console application. I'm not showing the sieve anymore. But here I did some little refactorings already. So I worked at a string builder that you can have an error. Is it connection error, or which error is it? And we are not only returning a boolean if it worked or not. We are returning a string with a possible error message that we built via a string builder here. That also you can have the error details if it's needed. For example, there's no internet connection, or the service isn't working, or you are over your limit, your budget limit in the future. Then I have my pages, and here I have my index. Index.trace. So, and that I didn't read the load. That's the first and the most easy example for the developer to test it, but it's the less helpful, because here you really have the welcome paragraph. You really kind of read the whole page in once. So even you have the welcome head with no button here. Then you have your paragraph, and if you look at your code block, it's with the load everything. It's with the load the welcome head, and directly the with paragraph. So in fact, it doesn't differ a lot from a screen reader. Besides of, it doesn't with the menus. And here I return, I just checked if the result isn't empty. And if the result is empty, then I don't show everything. And otherwise, in result is the error message. So here in result, if it's empty, it doesn't show anything. And otherwise, it will show the error message. And I refactor it more and more. So, by example, by passive. Here you see I have my elements also. So I injected on each page the IGS runtime. I have my references to the page head. I have my result block, paragraph, and I have each time a button. Each time a button that reads the dedicated paragraph. So here I have my element references. I call my speech service, and then I have each time what to read. So here I have my read aloud, and the read aloud is my dedicated text to read aloud, the thing. And then here I just have the via each each task, each it's like an event handler is just read aloud. It grabs the text and read aloud the right text. But as I said, I'm also refactoring page per page. So in purpose, you also have the paragraphs. I just call it paragraphs 1, 2, 3, the same. Now let's imagine you want to work with the database and you really don't want to code everything hard code it. So there's a possibility for that. And optimism, so it's not with the database yet because I didn't connect it to, and I still have to try and have to practice a bit in EF Core, as my specialty is everything accessibility and UI. Other things are still to come. Here first, I saw it here. There's an area hidden. It's everywhere. And the next slide, the slide before the last slide in my application, in my presentation, I will say why it is for. And here I just iterate in the basic syntax my paragraph, and I do a DD accessibility paragraph with the content. The code is so. I also the connected speech. But here and on initialize, I load my paragraphs. And here, of course, it's a fake mockup data. It's not fake, but I mean, here it's really the thing in the future that I want to connect to a repository, to a database, of course. And really, it's an idea that you make a database or a kind of accessible CMS that you can add the paragraphs in one time. And then it will be the same thing, a list of paragraphs, but not with fake data, but filled in with the database. And then it's the same. But here we are working, as I said, with the DD paragraph. And here you put the paragraph, the content. And what is a DD accessibility paragraph? It contains already and here I just have a P from paragraph. I also inject the IGS runtime. I have my content, and it's already have a button. With a button with the read the paragraph and also the area hidden that I will talk about within a few minutes. And here is just the same, but just in that component. So, and it's the page optimism that works in that way. So that's really a step to really go to a CMS that you can with everything from a database. And even further investigation, how we can work with a shared folder, for example, for the content, and then even maybe combine it to other web applications or even to mobile applications. So it's really work in progress. And what I wanted to achieve at this talk today is just showing how it's possible to introduce that new kind of accessibility that wasn't well known before, or that wasn't known before at all. And I really don't want to make it really full blown, everything really published, and then talk about it, because my purpose and my passion is an inclusive world and accessible world for all. And the earlier that people are seeing this concept and are really working on it, the more the big internet becomes more accessible. And even if we really all combine our powers via open source, by example, people who are really better and by example, entity framework, people who are really the design heroes, we come all together and we really contribute with the thing. Really, we need to contribute and not make it all. I like the quote, we don't need to reinvent the wheel because it's already invented. But I just want to keep it open here. No, for maybe the last things in the Q&A, because I just have a few more minutes. And in the minutes, I want to give you something more, not a lot more. And it's also really important. Be aware of the basic HTML accessibility. So work with alt tags to describe your images. Make a good usage of headings. Be aware of color contrast for people who are colorblind, and it's a huge percentage of all mail. Work with Aria, and very specific, if you work with that, you really need, for this kind of Blazor applications or this kind of applications, you need the Aria hidden. Why? Aria is really perfect for screen readers, and if you really want to, as I said, work with screen readers, it still works at that kind of application. But then you really need the Aria hidden tag on the buttons, because you really don't want to have the button speech a paragraph for persons with vision loss. That really will confuse everything. So the Aria, all the Aria things are important, but especially the Aria hidden things on the specific the speech buttons. It's not an excuse to make only a website for people with learning disabilities and not for other disabilities, because we want to build an inclusive world. So wrap up, you saw, I hope, a brand new concept of web accessibility. I really hope you all loved it, you liked it. You gave you some insights, and really you can do something with it in the future, in the near future, because the future is already here. If you see what's happening, and accessibility is really, really key for inclusion. That's wrap up, and I show you something about Microsoft Cognitive Speech. I showed you Blazor, and I showed you the step-by-step implementation. I have some time for questions. So there are my hashtag and my Twitter handle. I have 5 more minutes or 4 more minutes for questions about this concept. Thank you a lot. And if there are questions.
That was awesome, Dennie. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennie.
So it's not a specific question, but I was talking with Richard Campbell yesterday about the kind of move from keyboards to touchscreens and what we think the next big paradigm shift is going to be. And obviously, smartphone touchscreens are now things like Alexa and voice control. Do you think that there is going to be a sort of whole new user interface device? Speech is still very much an enhancement until things like Alexa and Google Home came along, where you just have a device in your house that has no screen. Do you have any ideas about what the sort of the next generation of voice interfaces might look like, or how those might work?
I want to contribute on that thought. First of all, it was very stupid that I couldn't watch the talk yesterday of Richard, because there are too many great talks here at NBC, and there was a Blazor talk at the same moment, and I really.
It wasn't even his talk. We were just chatting afterwards.
Oh, it was not his talk, but also I really believe in speech in the future, but there are some really important things to achieve, and if you combine it with accessibility. First of all, there need to be a full language parity. For example, if I do the speech thing like Alexa, I also have it in my home. It's just for fun. I'm a nerd, a geek, in English, a geek, and geeks like toys. And Alexa is a great toy. Just be honest of that. So I have it. But, for example, I cannot use it right now for accessibility project because it's not available in Dutch. And one of the basic things is, if you work on accessibility, you really need, for learning disabilities, you really need to target the main language. Another thing, even if you want to do it in Dutch, in their own language, let's imagine all for people from the UK, from Australia, or from the United States, it's already their main tongue. There's one thing really important to consider about combining speech or text-to-speech and even speech input for people with disabilities. That is, most of the time, their literacy isn't perfect, so they really, the chance is big that they form the words incorrectly or form some words incorrectly, then there really need to be a lot of work and programming, for example, that you can say works wrong, for example, for people with disabilities. Is it possible? Yeah. Is it a hopeful future? Yeah. But I'm afraid that it will be more at this time, especially where I live as a geek for fun projects. But the future is bright. But it's even very confronting for me. Now we are really talking about cutting edge Alexa, and then you have the privacy thing that all people are worrying about. But otherwise, what I showed you today was just with all technology were possible. And honestly, it even don't have to be Blazor. Just love Blazor. But you can call the Microsoft Cognitive Speech in each language. You can do it in JavaScript, PHP. So you can build it in each website without the need to be a Blazor website. And if you look at governments or all the websites that they are even not doing it, making it inaccessible, and that accessibility is only still a thing for people with vision loss and auditory disabilities. That is really needed, of course, but there's more needed. For me, so if you really want to talk about really cutting edge new things, if they should start with really using what existed on a really broader space, I think should be a great start if you ask my opinion about that.
Awesome stuff. All right. Thank you very much, Dennie. Thanks, folks, for coming along. It's 10 o'clock. Take a break, stand up, stretch your legs, get some coffee, drink some water.